So, oh, here we go. We got one question already coming up here. Hey, Tony, how are you doing today? Do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question? Let me try and get this here. There you go.
Hello, Tony.
Hey, I have a question concerning your usage of the words sub and supraglottic pressures because from what I've read so far, it's not really related to pitch or timbre that much. Of course, when we change pitch and timbre, both are influenced, right? But I
Uh-huh.
was a bit confused about your definition of
Of
those.
course, of course. So the subglottic is basically where we feel mainly the pressure in the top part of our chest. That's the subglottic one. When you hear supraglottic, you will actually feel a little bit of a lift underneath instead. So if you do something like a hoo, 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 you'll feel a very different sensation in your chest than when doing a or likewise. So
Of
we
course,
have
yeah.
two different ways of using chest voice, and that's the which one came first. That's the really fun part of it. If you add your supraglottic pressure first, your subglottic has to break through it first. So you're already stretched out, which means you're already up here. Does that make sense?
It makes sense if we redefine those words. And
Maybe.
it definitely makes sense as placement sensations. I totally know what you mean when you say you have this kind of feeling versus this one. But I think it's
Exactly.
important to note that that's not really what like Sundberg and Titze mean when they use these words. And this is fine because words are,
Mhm.
we have to
Of
define them and
course,
then we use them.
of
But
course,
yeah,
of course, of course.
Yeah, so I'm bouncing around here on the controls, so if you hear some clicks.
Mhm.
But yeah, let's talk about that because you guys obviously, Tony and Zerlin are very much more deep on the scientific end of vocalization than maybe a singer that's never heard these words before.
Mhm.
So if you guys have some questions, just put in the chat. So let me just recap a little bit. So in the scientific term, the glottis, the first time I heard somebody say the glottis and glottal pressure, I'm like,
Yes.
never heard about that before. Well, what in the boop is that?
Mhm.
Well, the vocal folds are basically the glottis. Not really, but basically yes.
The
So
hole in between, at least.
yes. So if you imagine here's your vocal folds, they're open in kind of a V shape when you're breathing, and they call this space right in between the glottis. So when you close your vocal folds, you're actually closing the glottis. So the pressure there is the glottal pressure, right? And the pressure below is your subglottal pressure, glottic pressure, and
And
above is the supra. I
yes,
can't turn off my phone. It's ringing. It's supposed to be on silent.
exactly. And that comes from the pharynx and so forth. That supraglottic pressure.
Yes. So maybe can you be a little bit more clear on your uh, on your question, Tony? What was a little bit new or described differently for you by Zurin?
so the way I understand sub and supraglottic pressure and the way that it's defined in scientific research is that subglottic pressure is basically the air pressure below our vocal folds, right? And then supraglottic pressure is the air pressure above our vocal folds that resists that. And if we make a smaller mouth shape or resist with our tongue compressed and all that, we have a higher supraglottic pressure. So, ow, we feel more of a hold there, right? But like the way that Zoran used those seem to be linked to pitch ranges and to sound color, which of course they are related, but I've never heard
No,
supraglottic and subglottic
no.
pressure as a placement sensation
Well,
before.
so when we look into it in that way, as I'm trying to explain, is when you say air. Well, if I do an F, that's just air, right? So now, how do I close my vocal folds? I do that by adding this subglottic or supraglottic pressure, right? So that was one. That's another. Do you see?
You do you do have subglottic pressure in both cases, but it's higher in the
Of
moment where your
course.
vocal folds come
Yes.
into resist. But you also have supraglottic pressure all the time, and
Of
it
course. But
reacts to
which
your
one came
subglottic pressure, right?
first? Which one came first is what you need to look at a little bit more.
Both come first because it's egg and chicken basically.
But if the supraglottic pressure is added first, then you'll get a brighter tone. It's
I've never
funny
heard
how
that
it works.
before, but it's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So, and Zern is, I'm guessing this is kind of, I can maybe make a segue
Hmm.
into what you're talking about specifically when you mean this is kind of where you determine your onset. Am I correct in understanding you like
Yes.
that?
Exactly, exactly. Our brain is also determining, as I mentioned, it as the frequency. So when I start on a low pitch, then you're trying to, normally all my students would go much lower in pitch. But when we start on the brighter part of the chord, then they will instantly go brighter as well. And that's the frequency. And again, as you say, yeah, there's some tonal stuff there going on. And that's because the supraglottic pressure is added first 99% of the time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. So, we talk a lot about it last week. Whoever was on Voice Masters last week, if you didn't get a
Mm-hmm.
chance, it's
Yeah.
available in our archive with Aramat talking about registers, and
Mm-hmm.
she did the interesting experiment to think of how you're going to say something with what emotion or how you're going to sing something, and instantly your body creates an internal position. So, just for an experiment for everybody that wasn't here last week, imagine you're really excited and you want to say like an event or a party you want to say yeah, okay, now don't say it, but I want you to think it and go to the position silently right before you would say it and notice what you do in the inside without even thinking about it. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Exactly.
Right, there's a position going on in there. So
Mm.
are you asserting that this position is
Created by the hearing as well, yes, and perception of sound, yes.
so does that positioning influence then your subglottic
Yes,
pressure before
exactly.
you even start making sound?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's
Perfectly said.
so how can we use that to optimize something in our singing?
Well, one way is, of course, noticing it. So, for example, if I started with the low part, something like that, notice how the first pitch sounds. But now, if I started the other way, why did it do that? Because the perception of that pitch is higher in our ears in the frequency span of the auditory cortex. So when I come back to that one, I'm singing brighter than I would otherwise. So we have two options always when singing a single pitch. We can either go something like or la on the same pitch, for example. Mhm.
Cool. We've got another question coming up, but I just want to jump on this a little bit. Have you? I've noticed this, and I notice this with a lot of singers I work with. Sometimes it's really hard to go from the bottom up, like on an interval like
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and then coming from the top down is harder for other people. So
Yes.
often I have them try both to find out to kind of balance these optimal zones, right? So
Exactly.
is that just helping them get a better balance of their supra
Yes,
and
exactly. So also
bottom
just
pressure?
knowing what you want, really, right? Because if you have a rock sound in general, right? Like let's just say, yeah, that's one guy. But what if you wanted something a little bit more modern, like yeah? That's your la and your oud basically. Oud la la la. We have that more old school rock, if you may, at least, or 90s rock, like Disturbed or something likewise. But when we then do the more modern one, like, I got another confession to make, then we have that different one where it's instantly stretched out and it's already in that higher momentum, it could be the same pitches, but it's going to be perceived very differently.
Yeah, thank you for that. Christine had a question. You want to take yourself off of mute and ask Zerun the question? Let me spotlight you here a bit.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can
Hello.
you hear me? Hi.
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, I'm kind of like Tony because it's also for me kind of a new way of seeing things, of looking at
Yeah,
things,
I
and
know.
it does kind of make sense that you
Mhm.
know, we should investigate. And I often, actually, I come from CBT, and this is something we don't really
Uh-huh.
talk about,
Mhm.
but I have often searched for ways for people to build up pressure, like um, just behind their lips, for example, or
Mhm.
you know, become conscious of the pressure. But I
Yes,
never really thought of that balancing. This is what you're talking about, right?
exactly,
Balancing the
exactly.
upper,
Mhm. The
supra
supra and sub, yes.
and subglottic pressures. So how would you investigate that balance? Are there exercises where we can kind of make the pressure move upwards, go from subglottic to supraglottic? Is it
So
just playing around with sound color or
it's a
something like
little bit
that?
on the sound color side for sure. What I would always say is sing like la instead of ut. When you just, we can also say hi hu. When you say that, you
Okay.
can feel instantly the two different parts activate. And why it's opposite is basically because that's what's needed to close it correctly. Exactly as Tony said, we need both always. That's
Yeah.
correct. But however, which one starts, then you're going to feel the opposite, like inside your chest. That's really fun.
Yeah. I think this is the part that I don't really get. This where do we start? I
Yeah, yeah.
can relate to the balance, you know, between supraglottic and subglottic pressures, but I
Hmm.
don't really understand this thing of okay, starting with supraglottic or subglottic. Um,
Mm.
yeah, this I don't really get. So
Okay.
how could we become conscious of doing that? I'm
Well,
unclear.
you can also, when we just hear a pitch in general, are you listening to the fundamental, which is more on this one, right? Or are
Yeah.
you listening to this when you're listening to this pitch? Knowing that is going to change a lot in the perception of sound. That's why we need to change the perception. As you heard those two birds, the first one, ooey, ooey, and the other one, ew, ew, type of thing, right? And which
Yeah.
one was brighter? The one that started with the pressure bright down instead. So the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
supraglottic is definitely added first there to make
Yeah.
it brighter. So making, it's a mix of course the oral cavity as well for sure, but when you, for example, just sing la instead of ut, then you are going to get that more modern approach basically.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. It's
So
basically written down in the 1500s if you want to know. But it's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's hard to understand it today, of course, but yeah, old
Mm-hmm.
music theory.
Well,
Yeah,
can I?
go ahead,
Uh,
Chris.
if I
Go ahead.
really understand, I'm not sure I completely understand, but in
Mhm.
my ears, it sounds like it's very related to sound color. So
It is
even if I would
definitely.
start from a lower tone, for example, but if I just try to make it light in sound color, then I
Mhm.
would add some supraglottic pressure. Is that what you're saying?
One more time. Sorry, just
If
one
you
more
would
time.
think lighter sound color, then
Mhm.
does that mean that we would use more supraglottic pressure?
Yes, yes,
Okay, yeah, because
exactly.
as you demonstrated
They
it,
are they are connected for sure. There's no
yeah,
question about that. Definitely.
yeah, okay, yeah, because as I heard it, the
But when you hear just supra
new,
and subglottic pressure as well, you know,
mm,
they
yeah,
are different sound colors already. So yes,
yes,
the color changes which one is which where you put the main pressure or which one you start with. Mhm.
okay, that does makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No problem at all.
Yeah, great. We got I see a hand from Tony here. Let's Tony, you want to ask a clarifying question?
I think I know what you mean, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it seems to relate also to like the classical idea of chiaroscuro, right? Of
Mm,
balancing bright and dark a
yeah,
bit.
yes.
I think it makes a lot of sense, but I think connecting it to the words sub and supraglottic pressure is a misnomer. They're just not defined that way. I think what you're saying is right, but it's super confusing that words that have a totally different definition are used. So I don't try to crash it, but
No,
it's
no.
just it's just not like the what they mean, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good example. So no, it's great because I'm sure there's some people like Tony there that are might get a little hung up on this, but maybe it helps to clarify, um, what actually creates the subglottic pressure and what creates the supra or postglottic pressure. Do you want to share any thoughts on that, Zuran?
Well, for me, it is this chest voice you feel from the subglottic when we go, for example, as I said, ho, 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 ho. That definitely comes from underneath without a question, because that's where you hear it from. But when we brighten it, then there's no air coming out. Why? It's you can hear it's stopping that air to come out because the supraglottic pressure is too much for that exhaled air to really happen. Does that make any more sense?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I like to think of it, of course, if we just take, divide things up. Often I'll do this for students or singers, right? Trying to make my hands work right. But you have
Yes.
you have the glottis, your vocal folds. So the pressure out of the lungs, that's the air flow, the rate of air coming up. How
Yes.
much the vocal folds resist that creates, right? That creates the pressure here.
Hmm.
But the space on the top, right? All this space in here, that creates inertance and this supraglottic pressure.
Yes.
So it's very fascinating, and I like to try and help us say if we get those pressure zones as singers, if we get those more in sync, then the vocal folds work very, very efficiently. If they're slightly out of balance, then we might have a crack, a flip, then the voice, we just lost that pressure. Of course, we can talk, and that both of those help to also create the adduction of our vocal folds, how they compress. So they're both I think it's very, very important. I'm curious, let's see, we've got Stasia would like to ask a question. Then I want to do maybe an experiment with you, working with somebody that would like to just vocalize a little bit and talking about how we can use this to create an onset for what we want to achieve. Go ahead, Stasia.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Hi. So I'm a bit confused with all these things because I'm not experienced as other singers here. But I was wondering, can we say that supraglottic pressure can be same as shaping a vocal tract?
Mm, you could probably
Like,
say
you
it
know, I mean, shaping a
big,
vocal tract with vowels, for example.
probably in the big picture we could a little bit call it in that direction. Yeah. I would at least personally say, what do you think, Philippe? I think at least to some extent, yes, because the tongue and soft palate and so many parts are really a part of it. So in micromanagement, it might actually have a big part in that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very fascinating. If you think as a singer, we've got the vocal folds closing, that's pretty obvious that, why it creates pressure down here. But if you open your mouth, there's nothing, what's blocking the air coming out? What's causing that, supra or postglottic pressure? And I think that's where it can get a little confusing. So yeah, I agree with what you said and what Staja said, the configuration or the shapes that you create up here, they have a major influence. But we can't also ignore what the vocal folds are doing. You know, and the vocal folds need that supraglottic pressure, that those to work efficiently, because what we don't, I didn't know for a long time. It's like, oh my gosh, so you're saying that the air that's going out of my vocal folds is actually not all of it's going out, some of it's
Yeah,
getting kind of
exactly.
recycled like water to create this constant pressure zone in there, and energy and sound is also going back. So it's a pretty amazing instrument we have. It's like the
You
source.
work like a flute.
Go
You
ahead.
work like a flute.
Sorry.
You work like a flute. So some air is coming back in basically. And that's where you can feel it on the word la, where you can kind of feel that small pressure in the back as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of consonants, like s is obviously going to release air and release or lessen that supraglottic pressure. And this is why, if for people that are singing loud volume singing, oftentimes they'll have a problem if their S is too big or their F, or they put on the H, because you release that top pressure, so to speak. And then the vocal folds start fluctuating, voice might crack, they might not get a nice loud vocal fold compression closer for loud singing. But let's do an experiment. Let's see. I'm gonna, anybody that wants to in our Zoom meeting here that wants to work with Zuran on anything, just send me a text. I'll keep an eye on it. But so if I want to sing, if I want to sing a phrase that is going to be ascending in pitch, um, like we got to come up with a phrase here, so we're not just making something up. But let's see. What's that? Everybody knows this Louis Capaldi song, right? A lot of people do. I'm just gonna try and pull up the lyrics real quick. Just hang with me one sec. Someone you loved, right? Everybody's pretty much heard someone you loved. So I'm just gonna hit a spot. Let's skip forward and see if I can find. So there's an easy phrase on this one. Driving me crazy. I need somebody. So the lyrics here would be, I need somebody. I just want to find that. I need somebody to heal, somebody to know. Right? So if we're going up there, I need somebody to heal, somebody to know. Right? And a lot of singers are doing, I think this kind of fits in with what you're talking about. I need somebody to heal, somebody to know. And they're jumping all over the place and go, why can't I do this? So how can we use your approach to create better onset for this path?
So, for example, you can, if you want that lowness in the beginning, then yes, use that oot type of a sensation inside. So, oot, 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 la, to keep it instantly pushed down at the end. So, end it on a la sensation instead of that oot all the way up. I think this is also why when we hear operatic singing that it changes in vowel instantly when we go higher up. You do not keep that ah, it suddenly goes from ah to o and so on. It's never going to stay the same vowel because these pressures are uneven a little bit, and they will always be a little bit uneven, in my personal opinion at least.
So if you're listening to me, right, and if I sing, let's say I'm going to try, I need somebody to heal. I'm trying to maintain the subglottic pressure.
Yes, exactly.
So is it either or do I need to start with more supraglottic pressure? How do I optimize this phrase?
So basically, on the first one, you can still begin on that oot. We can flip it at any time. So, for example, a flip would be something like this. I start on a growl and turn a growl into a rock sound. So, for example, right? That's instantly changed then. And that's kind of what we're doing as well with the clean singing aspect of things. We're still adding the change then. So you're basically, if you think about it as pushing down, as a lot of classical singers will call it, push down instead of reach for the pitch, then what I want you to do is focus on a push up from the bottom part of your rib cage instead of keep on pushing down.
Okay,
So,
so
for example,
I've got
instead.
if I go from so let's say, should I choose then maybe a oo vowel in the beginning and just to
Exactly.
take
And
two
turn it
vowels
into a la.
and
Yes.
switch to a la? So I go ooh la with the L or just ah. Ooh la.
Yes. Yes. If that's, we can always start in different ways. You can also say that you want to start in that brightness of the last pitch, right? So you can sing la throughout if you don't want that lowness. But it's always about what we like and what we, you know, it's not just saying, oh, you should sing it like this, you know. If you want that little type of a thing at the end, then stay in oud, of course. Um,
So if I want to have a lighter sound, basically you're saying we could do it both ways. So if I want that la 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 la
yeah,
la la la, so there I'm using a higher supraglottic pressure, the pressure above the vocal folds,
yes,
than subglottic pressure, right?
yes, yes, exactly.
So that can make it really easier for some people, but somebody might want, Louis Capaldi is using this bigger, darker sound down there. I need some, so he's focusing on a little bit more of that lower pressure and then letting it flip.
A little bit, yeah, or at least add a little bit more of it, depending on how much we want. And this is not with us suddenly twanging or something like that to brighten the tone. This is just the pressures.
Okay, cool. So you're saying that it could help for a singer to feel, think darker, think bigger, and then also what would be a gesture that could help, because you also were very specific on how the mind, and hand connection. So if we were going to just do this phrase, I need somebody to hear, what kind of a hand gesture or could
We can
work?
always, basically, as Heidi also mentioned so amazingly, the pinky is the one that's the closest to our two vocal folds. So if you lift the pinkies and or add the attention in them, even will activate this part a little bit, and it
Wait,
can
wait,
really.
wait. That's cool. That's kind of crazy. So basically, it's like you're just gonna get the pinky out.
Yes, yes, fancy drinking.
Yeah. I need somebody to hear. I'm not sure. I believe that actually helped, but it's so new. I've never tried using pinky tension. So
It's
I don't know.
really
If you're at home, try this out. Let's all try out with the pinky tension. We can do it like a hang loose, or you can think of drinking a drink with the pinky. So let's all try it out and see what works for you, and then you can put in the chat. I need somebody to hear, somebody to hold. I actually think it's working for me.
yeah, it's really fun why it does, but it's the closest you can get to the dorsal laryngeal motor cortex. That's your pinky, so that's really fun. I have some rappers now as well that want to keep their pressure correct and so on. They like have that finger a little bit up the whole time instead. It's really fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. You can probably see, I mean, maybe this will be a fun thing for everybody to do, but when you're watching now singers, singing live on video, YouTube, whatever,
That's a
I've
little.
seen a lot of singers hold the mic
Yeah,
like that. A
yeah.
lot. And I think I've done it too, maybe subconsciously. I mean, this isn't really this change for me, register change, pressure change, really, it's not that difficult for me because I've been doing stuff like this for a long time. But I actually think that little pinky, it just, I don't know, maybe it just distracted my brain or synced something up. It was very interesting. So that's really cool. So just to recap, if we can use the pinky to enhance higher pitches or enhance this sound quality.
At least the sound quality. pitch wise, you can of course discuss, but at least you're probably helping it a lot because the onset of your voice is as close as it can to that pinky in the dorsal laryngeal motor cortex, which is the onset inside our brain as well. So there's something happening there. Maybe it's correcting the pressures a little bit for us. That is also an option, of course.
Yeah, we've got an interesting, got a nice comment from YouTube here, and I'll have to admit I don't know the research on pinky connection and vowels, but from let's see, just got from a user number here, but the pinky thing works only with an open vowel, but not with an E. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Have you looked into that at all?
No, we haven't looked into different vowels. This is a brain scientist, a neuroscientist really looking into this. So it's what they notice is that when they put any electric information into that part, we start voicing. So someone who is not active at all would start making different sounds. And now they're connecting these parts into the different vowel shapes and so on. So it's they will soon basically get people to talk whom cannot talk, and that's the whole, what they're trying to reach at this point, at least.
Oh, that's super fascinating. Let's see, Erickson, did you have a question, or would you like to try something out with Søren?
I'll try something out with Søren.
All right, cool.
So I guess I don't know if you have something or if you want me to think of something, or because I have volume control issues when I'm soft.
Okay, when you're soft, volume control. Okay, so soft in this case, you do mean more of a brighter tone and not like a something like that, right?
As far as volume, I'm not sure if that kind of relates more to what you're doing or talking about today,
Mm-hmm.
or
Well, volume control, in my opinion, is about um, how much air you're really setting through, how much you make that tummy go in and up, basically. Some days we need a little bit
okay.
more, sometimes we need a little bit less. Um, we can, for example, just try on a la, for example, just to see how it works up here, for example, just a little to brighten up that tone. So just a simple la 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 la.
La 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 la.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now try to sing it in ut instead to see if which one is the better. So, for example. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So you're connecting the same part. So if you say hi first, just notice what's happening inside your chest when you say hi. Do you feel a small pressure go upwards in your chest part?
If I put my hands
Yeah.
there, yeah.
And if you say something like hoo hoo hoo, you feel the more pressure up here, right? Go down. Hoo hoo hoo.
I'm not aware of it as well.
Okay.
As much
Okay.
as you.
If you in general sing as classical as you can, like what you perceive to be classical, a very dark pitch, for example, something in that direction. Can you feel that small push down type of a sensation?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you again say hoo hoo hoo, like hoo 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 type of a thing as well, like Santa.
Ho 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 ho. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So those two are your two components to either make a classical singing style going down or a or brighter, more modern singing style, really. And that's gonna control these parts as much as it can. So um, when you sing your ut, for example, then you push that pressure down instead of putting it up. Of course, you can sing ut in a bright version. Of course, you can. But if you want to keep it low there, then keep it low. If you want to brighten it up, then push upwards. So now that you are more aware of that, try again just to put more focus on that push up when doing your la, and that should hold it together as much as it can. a lot of air go through. Could it maybe be your solar plexus actually that's not expanded that much?
La, 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 la.
A little bit better. Try to go a little bit more. What I always tell is go in and go up in your tummy. Do not just go in, but in and up. Oh, whoo, my table was about to fall there.
La, la, la.
Yes, so that was your tummy. So that means the amount of exhaled air was probably not sufficient enough.
Okay.
So the closure was correct, but the amount of air that you were supporting this pressure with was just not enough at this point.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
Is there another phrase that you were thinking of when you were singing, Erickson, that maybe some phrase in a song that you were thinking of specifically when you said that you sometimes struggle with volume issues, soft?
Kind of when I'm kind of imitating other singers. Most of my own singing is just kind of loud anyway, and I'm okay with that.
Nice. Okay, but in general, just notice, if they're having more of the classical part in their voice, if we went something like, I do not know if you know the band Disturbed, for example, but that's at least a good one for me to explain that classical type of a thing. So you see, I cannot, that much more pushed down and rounded lowness, if you may. But when you listen to something like Foo Fighters, it's so much brighter and doesn't have this lowness into it, right? Just knowing that can really change a lot of things. Sometimes they flip a lot, and then, oh, okay, so that's a flip, and then so now I have to go that who he or he who, depending on which what is going on in the phrase, really.
Yeah, I think I've got something. I think this might be important to point out, at least for me personally.
Yeah.
So, because you're talking often about pushing down or pushing up. So I'm sure if you're a singing coach or voice teacher, some of the voice teachers might be going, oh my gosh, push up, because they might be thinking, and maybe some of the singers might also get misperceive that as talking about here, the larynx,
Yeah.
right? Because often when people push up, then they're pushing their larynx up and it gets tight. And when you say push down, they're pushing down their larynx and it gets tight in the opposite direction. So how, but tell us if you're talking about the larynx or what exactly are you coaching people to recommend people focus on?
Well, it depends again on what the result of tone is really, because again, you can change the larynx position with how you inhale, which nasal contour you're using, or you can call it pitched breath, if you may. So if you're taking a high pitched breath, then you're already raising your larynx position a little bit, and we need to. You cannot. That's why a bass tone dies around here. It just cannot really go further in many cases. And if you lower your voice too much, then it will just break. And the same for a bright tone. If I have someone come to me, hi Søren, I would like to learn how to growl, then the onset is so far off from what these growls need. So if that person, hi, then it's going to be something like worse than Cookie Monster at that point, because we're so far apart. And then again, when it's a bright tone, well, how about using a bright nasal contour combined with that? Or lower the nasal contour breath with that bright push, if you may. But we notice it when you sing something like glamour, 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 glamour. You do not glamour, glamour. You can sing like that. But if we listen to anything like, this is probably the wrong session, but Backstreet Boys or something like that, more modern singing styles, you do have this much kinder, much more airy to some extent version of chest voice, and not this type of a thing. Does that make a little bit sense? I hope.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I'm not sure it makes sense for everybody.
No.
So I just was saying it when you're talking, because you're very aware, and some singers are very aware of what they feel and they
Yes.
maybe feel this pressure, that a lower pressure, a higher pressure, but it takes a little while to
Body
develop that
awareness.
sensation,
Yes, body
right?
awareness is a big thing in singing. I believe so, at least. It's not just something that comes over day, but overnight. But it when it's there, it's really much easier to react on somatics, in my opinion, at least.
No, I agree. It's very important. Every singer's developing it as they go.
Mm.
So you just recommended to Erickson to increase the subglottic pressure a minute ago by giving a little push on the inside. Is
Pushing,
that correct?
pushing more on that area. Yes, exactly. To
Okay.
keep a little bit more together. Hmm.
And I'm sure that if that hadn't have worked for him, let's say it just didn't work, he's like going, huh, huh, huh,
Yeah.
because it happens all the time. Singers, we all understand information differently. So if it didn't work here and it was creating tightness up
Mm.
here, what would if a singer's feeling, let's say, tightness trying to push, what would you recommend that they try in the opposite direction?
In general, pushing the trachea shouldn't be something we're doing. So every time that I have students, especially growlers, talking, oh, I cannot keep my voice when doing these monster sounds, as I call them, then what they normally are doing is they're putting all their pressure down there really, and not up in the pharynx instead. And that's also a big part of it, keeping that pressure up there. So it's a mix of few things for sure, but I would always say something like "he who," because those two have very different characters on its own. If we also do, if we listen to something like "Cry Me a River" with Justin Timberlake, in the verse part, he's mainly on this "who" type of a way of singing falsetto. But then when those really bright tones come, he's much more on this he who. You can of course say who on the other one, and that's the funny thing, but it would be more uncommon really. But in general, when we combine them, say them after each other, one or the other will happen. um, so you cannot, yeah, you'll hear both at least, when doing these sounds. It's the easiest way to find it that I've found so far at least. Or simply just say, well, sing la or sing ut on that specific part. Mhm.
All right. Well, that could be interesting to do. So let's just, yeah, let's take that example. Um, one more time. What was you said? What was the song you just said?
Cry Me a River with Justin Timberlake.
Cry Me a River. So I'm gonna pop it up. So we've got there we go. You were my sun. And then you're thinking about
So that,
Cry Me a River
yeah, exactly.
right about over here.
That's your heat, yeah. And then you have the that type of a thing going on. So brighter or darker. That's the easiest way to really mention it sometimes.
It was a lot of people are looking, a lot of guys are looking for this, and they're trying to do it, how do I get that sound? How do I get it clear, right?
Mhm.
So if we're doing Cry Me a River, this would be more. Do you have singers? Do you have them try going la 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 with a la?
One more time? I didn't
Do you
understand exactly what you meant.
do you have singers? Do you coach singers that want to find this sound? Do you coach them to sing it on a la 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 first?
Yeah, for example, yes. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. And how do we get them? How do you help them using this
No,
onset and pressure? How do you help them to get it more
exactly.
clear?
Exactly. So la again to brighten that tone to get that type of a sound as the falsetto region has. Then we can again say, do you want a brighter or a darker version of that? So the single pitch is really what we're talking about in this case, and not what's coming after, but just that single pitch at a time, right? Because it's the onset of it. So are you singing or on that is already going to give you two very different versions of that single pitch. So when he's going up, he's definitely, and making it brighter, he's going on the he instead of the who. Also,
Okay.
if we look on IPA, you can instantly tell that a more fronted sound is coming, right, with the E sound.
Yeah, so let's just backtrack and try and put these things in order. So one thing that I think is really interesting is you talked about we have three different kinds of inhalations that will actually position our diaphragm. And so let's say we want to I want to get this sound on this phrase, cry me a river. How do I, which inhalation or what do I need to think of to get the optimal inhalation for that?
High pitched inhalation, as soon as I would normally say this octave for low inhalation, a little bit higher if so, but depending on whom you are, of course. But mid nasal concha, middle C, and then again, high pitched breathing. So it's not a lower, because you're already putting yourself too far from that initial pitch. As I mentioned with, he cannot really reach it if he has too high of an onset in his voice. But if you breathe in very highly, like as if it's super needed, or at least you can, also these gestures will of course help. However, you can do it without the gestures. Hi, instantly a much brighter version of myself because of that inhalation and how it's expanding the diaphragm as well.
All right, so how do we inhale high then? Do
So
we
you
do
can do
we
a
think a
smile with
high
it.
pitch or
Yeah.
do we or what do we do to make a high inhalation?
So you can of course block the lower one by simply smiling. I always start by saying like super like mouse or something like that. Hi. And if you speak right after, you should get a much brighter tone of yourself and you should be a little bit okay. I normally don't speak like that. And the same for the mid one, it's going to be much more as a regular speech pattern. When you do a low one, it's going to give you that low sound for low pitches and low sounds.
So the facial expression has a lot can really be a good guide, right? So if I'm going to have a that looks like what? Put in your chat what that looks like to you. Does that look like a high or low inhalation? I'll try one, and then I'll what does this look like? All right, so you guys can guess what that looks like. And Zurin, can you give us another type of inhalation? We'll try and guess what. All right, cool. How about another inhalation? All right, and one more. Okay, cool. So I'm guessing. I got my guesses. What about you guys? I'm guessing you went from low, medium to high. Is that correct?
Totally. That's
Okay,
exactly what
so
I do.
so do you feel the facial expression is really determines that, or
It
do you feel kind of
could
a
be.
different kind of opening?
I honestly, I feel that connection with those nasal conchas. It might be by knowing as well, but however, if you want to feel all of them, then you can kind of breathe forward and then go in. Then you're opening up for all of them, and that's
Mm.
going to make a really crazy sensation here as well. But you don't normally do that, at least. But that's another way of just getting in there as fast as possible, if needed.
Yeah, that's super interesting. A lot of coaches or teachers, learn themselves and pass this on. Try and inhale something that's really pleasant, like you're going to
Yeah.
inhale the scent of a rose, right? Or
And
you
then you
wake
breathe.
up to the smell of fresh coffee, right? So what kind of inhalation is that going to give us? Is that opening up
Normally,
everything or what?
normally I would say that opens up the mid nasal concha. But again, some people do naturally breathe with a low one or a bright one. So it really depends on what they normally do. But I would say if it's, you're probably not going to go woohoo. That's a nice coffee. At least not that very often in the morning, right? So I normally would be the mid nasal concha for speech because you're not set up to sing at that point.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, I want to try this on with this inhalations. You guys can all try this as well. But so I'm going to try for this "Cry Me a River." Try with a really, high inhalation. Basically, I'm thinking the pitch first. I know my brain's already saying it's high, so I'm going to try to set up the inhalation a little bit and think a little bit of that emotion and see what happens. Cry me a river. So I felt like that actually helped me get the position prepared first.
Yes.
So we'll go for like an inhalation I'd use if I were singing, if I was on the operatic stage.
Yeah.
Cry me a river, and it does change the quality quite a bit. It just helps prepare the space in a way.
There was this fancy word in Italian. I really forgot it now, but where they talk about inhaling the pitch, and I think that's really what it's about as well, um, in the big picture. One thing is that we can hum it and we can do all these other things, but kind of inhaling it already when you hear it type of thing can definitely support that air structure that you need for these specific pitches. Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that statement, that thought. It's it's so important. I mean, the way we breathe is so vital to our singing, right? Because the way we speak, and obviously we have to get air in and out of our body to survive, but when we're speaking and going through the day, we never think about how much air we're going to breathe in to speak or what kind of sounds we're going to make. It's just automatic, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we want to get our technique to as well, is this just becomes more automatic. But these can be really great tricks to help you if you're struggling with a pitch or a phrase, to help you prepare that position even before you start singing. I think that's one of the reasons they say that in the old bel canto school is inhale the pitch, because they're preparing even before they sing. They're preparing actually the inhalation. They're preparing the shape on the inside that's going to create the right supra and subglottic pressure, so that when the vocal folds then engage, they're already going to be on track. And this happens so often with singers. It happened to me. I'm guilty of doing it a million times, but of not being ready for that next interval, right? That next pitch. I'm like, la, there is a technique to actually take it up to the next pitch or have the little jump. But if you don't think a little bit ahead and concentrate on that pitch in your mind and set up the position, you're always going to be dragging something up. And it's always much, 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 much more work for you as a singer than to inhale right, set it up, and then sing. It works so much better. At least that's my experience, and that would be a tip. So I like this approach. So we inhale the right way. Inhale for the phrase you're going to sing, in what style or sound color you're going to sing. You know it already. You know what it wants to sound like, or you want it to sound like. Yeah. Set it up and then let it go. Is this
And then how we let it go depends on which one, if it's more on the la side or the ut type of a style, right? Or he hu again. So that's the second part of, as you mentioned, bel canto, if you may.
right? So that, but you got to know what you want. Basically, saying you need to know what you want before you start to sing, right?
You don't know which register you want to sing in. That's probably the most common as well. We see as with students that they do not know which register. They're like, so which register was that? I sometimes just ask them and they are instantly, I don't know. So if they don't know, how is their brain going to react to this? We know as well that the brain reacts to different. The brain is sending if it's going to be a plosive or what type of a sound you're making. So already there, we cannot just hope for the best and then it's going to happen. We should know what we're doing a lot of the time. That's at least going to help us a lot.
Cool. I think Christine has a question, or is it's just like no.
It's just
I'm trying to type something, but it doesn't work anymore. So I don't know why. But yeah. Not really a question, but it's just that in my ears it sounds like, I mean, I haven't tried those different breathing
Mhm.
movements, and it kind of makes sense that it probably does change, where the pressure builds up mostly,
Yeah.
but also it sounds like um, it really impacts where my larynx
Yes, it
positions
does.
itself.
Yes,
So,
and
and
even
of
how your
course, if you
diaphragm.
go like this, the larynx goes up, and if you
Of,
go like this, it goes down.
of
So that conditions the breathing, but also the place where the larynx is. I tried to do, the Justin Timberlake
mhm.
phrase with a low breathing
Yeah.
type, but trying to put my larynx up, and it
But that's you
sounded
pushing
to
it
me like I
afterwards.
could do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
you pushing. Then that's why the onset is not correct. So if you knew already exactly what Philip said, if you know you're going up there, don't make it a stretch. There's no need for it. You already can set yourself off to succeed
mm,
instead of us working out to get there. You can
yeah, yeah,
always just hi, then you're already up
yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Instead of us trying to control our larynx. That's what I think a lot of voice scientists are talking about when they talk about fatigue and stretch and strain. It's really that we're pushing it to go these places instead of just breathing in correctly and going up there in the right
Mm,
way.
wow.
But also, if
Yeah,
you breathe
for sure.
bright, if you keep on breathing in with a bright pitch, notice that it's the top of your belly that's expanding and not the bottom part. That's really
Yeah,
funny
that's
to see.
interesting because, as a vocal coach, I have a tendency to tell people to, really relax and let the air go as far
Yeah,
down as
of course.
possible. Um, but then, of course, I notice that when myself I sing higher pitches, I do have a tendency to kind of build up pressure a bit higher. So
Yeah, of
it does
course.
make sense. I'm still a bit puzzled,
It's
Uh,
many things. It's many
yeah,
things.
it's many things, and I don't want to mix up things and concepts, like
No,
the
no, of
position of the larynx, the breathing, but it does make sense that, of course, they all work together. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
interesting, a lot to investigate, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's super, a very good question, a very good direction of thought, Christine. And what Zurin's saying that there's a bigger expansion up here if you breathe in higher. A lot of
Mhm.
operatic sopranos, female singers especially, they tend to have a lot more of their supporting activity or their airflow management in the floating ribs area, as opposed to the lower abdominals. So, but what I think is fascinating, if you really pay attention, I'll just back up here. If I do the smile, Mickey Mouse, hello, my name's Mickey Mouse, kind of inhalation, I do feel the expansion here,
Yes.
but at the same time, nothing changed on the relaxation of the lower abdominals, or that it's still a very low diaphragmatic breath, as they say. The diaphragm moved down just the same. I just I feel a little bit more expansion up here. So
If you take a
I
good
don't,
4-second breath, you should see as well that it's expanding there instead of expanding down.
yeah,
If you take, if you just keep on breathing and relax your belly muscles while doing it, of course, while inhaling as normally, you should see that it's expanding up top instead. Yeah.
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 So it's actually quite. We're trying to get always back to nature's optimal, right?
Yes. Exactly.
And the more we try and control it, the more it kind of gets out of balance. So just remember as you're doing this, observe and guide, don't do, because as soon as
Exactly.
we do it like gets in the way. And I love what you said about controlling the larynx. If you think of, there's so many little muscles here. We got the muscles in the pharynx. This is not what we're built to control consciously through conscious action. We can think, and ask and guide, but the more you adjust here, actually, generally, the worse singing gets. It just gets much more tighter. So
Definitely. Yeah.
there's a lot of coordinations that work a lot better as soon as you let go here and just let it take over. it's that old spiritual Buddhist way of thinking, just observe and guide, but don't do too much. So we
Exactly.
tend to be our worst enemies. So let's do a quick recap, Zern. So can you do me a favor? Can you pull up that graphic of what you're saying, where the connection between the brain and your nasal passage for breathing?
Let me see if I can get it up again. Oh, yeah, we just go backwards, I guess, to make sure that it's happening.
Yeah, just so we get that, we can have another visual and connect those dots and talk about how
Oh,
the
yeah.
mind body connection works there to help us prepare.
So when they are basically there as filters, if you don't know that already, to make sure we're not getting bad stuff um, inside our lungs, of course. And nose hairs is of course there for insects, not to put X inside there. I love to say that.
Wait a minute.
So it's going to be yay nose hair from now on. Yes.
I'm not seeing your screen yet. If you
Oh,
want,
I didn't share, of course. Oh, I forgot for a second. I'm so sorry. So yeah, ba-da-ba-dum. So these three filters are there, as I mentioned, for small particles, so they do not enter our lungs. And yeah, nasal hairs, which is not here, but is there for us not to get bugs inside our nose. But they all hit the same part back here, which is the funny thing why that these have so much to do with this different way of inhalation. But for some reason they do. You could say that it was the size of them. That would be another interesting theory why that the smaller one is giving us a brighter tone, right? Um, and I do not know how accurate this is size wise, of course, but we can hope that it's correct. But in general, when we breathe lowly in, we do get a lower sound. And yeah, when we do the mid one, which is more as for speech, um, and yeah, the bright one. So the best way is really to begin with just doing the full gesture of you doing a super high pitch with your nose as well, and facial structure like a mouse. And then the other one is what I call a relaxed breath or a thoughtful breath. So you're like, I need something now. I always, as much as possible, inhale with my nose, of course. But yeah, that would be the main one that we use daily. But some people do speak a little bit more up here, and they're obviously using their high nasal concha a lot of the time. And the same for the lower pitch voices, they're probably using the lower nasal concha a lot of the time. I see that at least with my students as well, that if they have a low pitched voice or at least baritone type of a thing, then commonly they do have a lower inhale as well. But what's making the lower one happen is that there's a nerve here that's kind of blocking these two, making sure that it's mainly coming through the lower nasal concha.
Ben, thanks for sharing that. That's super fascinating. I'm just curious now, for you, maybe if there we go. So for you as a coach, do you have you just you've discovered this, not discovered, but researched this, learned this? Is it part of your thought process now with the singers
Yes.
actually where they're breathing in through their nose?
Yes, it is. I teach them this very, very early in the stage simply because otherwise they're too far, as I mentioned before, from the initial pitch that they're trying to create. It will be impossible for the high nasal inhale and then do a really low pitch. It's going to sound funny. It's like, it's not, it's going to be more of the nasty sounds. Then it's not going to be anything near if they wanted a growl, for example.
I think that's. I mean, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to experiment with it. That's why we're here. We got a lot of great questions coming in here in the chat, so we'll take those. Also, just thinking, I've never really thought about trying to inhale, the top upper concha of my nose, and I'm guessing most singers never have either, right? But and maybe some singers are thinking to themselves, "Do I always have to breathe in through my nose?" You know, and but a
Yes.
lot of people don't realize that you can breathe in through your nose with your mouth open at the same time. So it's optimal breathing is actually breathing in through both, isn't it?
Um, well, what we know last year, mid last year, there came a book. I really forgot the name of the guy, but you can watch him on the Joe Rogan experiment or what it was called, where he's talking about breathing. What we know now is that if we do not breathe enough through our nasal cavity, it will decrease in size. So it is without a question the correct way to breathe. I know that a lot of opera singers will now bash me for this, but really, I have practiced doing this and I can jump around on stage and do fully nasal breathing and having speed parts, whatever it may be. You can still learn to relax, even though doing crazy death metals or whatever it may be, and still actually inhale through your nose. If you do it with your mouth the whole time, those red lights in your face and so on, you get so dry in your oral cavity, you're going to drink 5 bottles of water instead of just half a bottle or one bottle, whatever. That's just the fact. The more that you do this live and you know what it means to go up on stage on small stages as well as big, but that light is just so hot. It's like being down here in Bulgaria in the summer. So yeah, it's we have to inhale with our nose as much as possible. Why did it even happen that we have a nose next to our mouth? Well, as small cells, we only ate. But then what happened was we also ate stuff we shouldn't. So we started sniffing. Oh, can we eat that? Yeah, we can eat that. That's the first part. Then, oh, someone is trying to eat us. Now it's really easy for us to figure all of this out. So they came for a reason, these parts. It's not like now I can breathe with my mouth, but we learn this in the age around 3, then we start eating up what everyone is doing around us. And if everyone is inhaling incorrectly, like, yeah, it's been a good day, doing that type of a thing, then you will take that and do it as well. I saw it with my daughter as well. Up until the age of 3, she started up until there, she only breathed with her nose, and then slowly she started doing it with her mouth sometimes. And I was like, why is this happening now? But we're obviously just a big vacuum and want to be a part of the flock as much as we can.
Thank you. I like that. Definitely, I use the nasal inhalation all the time on stage, you know, and
Yeah.
I haven't been practicing it in the same way you have, but anytime, I mean, it's all about really a relaxed, optimal inhalation and keeping your breathing really optimized. But anytime I can, you know, I just breathe out, close my mouth, and most singers, professional singers, you'll see them doing the same thing. But I think it's a great suggestion for everybody to become more aware of that and use the nose for breathing more and more. Let's jump to a question here from Yuling Mok. I'm just reading the screen name, so that's probably not your real name. But the question is, how how does sub and supraglottic pressure help singers to smooth out breaks and the bridges?
Oh, that's a nice one. I always say around when we go from what people sometimes like to call their chest voice into their mixed, I will always say la to sol. I use very old 1500s, year 1500 method, the Goidonian hand, for this. And I think that these sounds can really help us with these breaks a lot by referring to them as the sounds that they use for going up in pitch, really.
So
Um,
what are those sounds again? Can you say those
yes.
slower?
So instead of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or si, do, then it's la, sol, fa, mi, re, ut, and then fa, mi, depending on how long you want that line to be. Um, I have had some students who've been taught the Goidonian hand before as well, and they were um, not. I don't know. I've tested it at least in many ways, I guess. So I found at least like 6 different ways to use it, but it's really a good way to handle those breaks. to keep your voice together and not just keep on breaking on them. Yeah, it's
You
at least.
have Do you have any exercise that that you find yourself using repeatedly that tends to help singers to optimize the sub and supraglottic pressure, to help them keep the voice going or work through that bridge zone? That's a question again. What exercise would Zurin recommend that I can train my coordination on?
Well, take one at a time, really. We can of course practice both as much as we can, but use that ut a low. What our imagination, because of how we hear things as well, all of us knows how a operatic singer sounds to some extent, right? If we think about that low male voice, you instantly have an imagination for what that sounds like. And sometimes I just say, be the biggest guy in the universe, and then, or Galaxis or something like that, depending on what they like. Um, and think that is your heavy subglottic chest voice type of a sound. And then your supraglottic could be Justin Timberlake pop bands that's super soft as Backstreet Boys at points. And figure this out, or um, use the word glamour. So you're more on the musical theater type of a thing, of the side of the spectrum first, and even them out, figure out when it's most needed for what. We will always brighten up our tone when going up in pitch, so you're already increasing your supraglottic a little bit when going up. But and if we don't, then it will break. If you lower your voice too much, it's just going to break around that A or G after the middle C. So that's at least what I see a lot of the time.
Okay, so you're basically recommending now. Let's say because you're talking about the different, basically different vowels, right, in this do re mi fa sol la, and the Gregorian hand. So are you recommending that you train one vowel up and down at a time?
So, for example, if we go in from the octave before it and go into the next, or we can just do it down here. So these first two will be la sol. So we get that correct closure to some extent. We can of course la. I just think that sol is going to be easier when we come higher up, because la sol, we get much more of that brightness that's waiting on us. There, instead of, if we use the do re mi one, then on the next do, what you're doing, you're not singing this pitch, you're singing this. And that's what I see a lot of the time being the issue with that approach, keeping too much lowness from the beginning. I
Mm.
personally think that their gestures were more correct for voicing.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. I've got a question from Kate. Can we have a similar onset when we inhale through our mouth as when we do through the nose?
I would never recommend breathing or inhaling with your mouth. You can exhale with your mouth as much as you want, and you can exhale with your nose as much as you want. But inhalation, I will never. If you really need to, then of course, like something bright can be smart. But again, you're only filling yourself up so little that why would you need that? You can equally just do a small sniff and get enough air, really, if you practice inhaling with your nose, because if you're not using it, you are decreasing the size, so it's harder for you. But the faster you get that going again, you will start feeling it much easier. They tested this with the guy who wrote the book, and saw that he closed his nasal cavity for just 10 days and got terribly sick from it. Now
Hmm.
they're relating different illnesses with non-nasal breathing. So it will happen soon that we'll have a book saying, or at least the doctors telling you, well, if you do not start breathing with your nose, then you'll be in the risk of these diseases, illnesses. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. In fact, people I had the COVID, and I have other family members, friends that have had it. One of the recommendations while you're recovering is actually to spend do 3 times a day, 5 minutes a day, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth.
Wow, right?
Isn't that
When
crazy?
we know there's filters, it's funny that it's even a thing to talk about. Like it should be, not even a question. Our nose is there for inhalation. Otherwise, those filters would not be there. They would be in our mouth.
But they also is saying that improves your lung activity and your lung capacity, breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So, I mean, I've been singing for 30 plus years professionally. I've always breathed in through my nose, but there's plenty of times I breathe in through my mouth. So I think it's possible. You know, the interesting thing that you talked about today is how you breathe in through your nose also sets up a positioning and activity, right? And you can, without breathing in, you can still set up that positioning. You can get that going. So
Because it's
I
brain
think,
first.
yeah. So I think it's optimal. Yeah, everybody, it's healthy to breathe through your nose, use your nose and your mouth, right? Don't neglect it. Meditation, that's really what they focus on and have been for thousands of years. Optimizing your breathing increases your health, and it is very, very effective in singing. So I still think you can, because sometimes you might need to breathe in through your mouth unless you've really, really practiced this, so where it's just such habit that it works optimally for you. But you can still breathe in and create the same position, but it feels very similar. Let's all try that just as an experiment. All right, let's do a nice smiley Mickey Mouse breath, and we're going to think of singing a high note, creating some space. Let's breathe in only through your nose, breathe out through your mouth again. Let's breathe in through the nose. Okay, memorize that position, whatever's going on up in this region. Now breathe out. Now breathe in through your mouth and try and recreate the same thing. I mean, it feels a little bit different.
Even the tonal quality is going to be different when inhaling with your nose or your mouth. It's going to sound quite different. I sometimes show my students when they do lip rolls and they forget to breathe with their nasal cavity instead. Then I show them and they instantly, oh yeah, I like the tone from my nose better instantly. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, we've got a question for you. It says, sorry, may I know the written name? I'm going to put it in the Zoom chat so you can read it as well. May I know the written name of the Sophage by Zorin? I haven't heard of that. Thank you for the explanation.
Know the written name. So it's the Goidonian hand. It's from the 1500s.
Can you
It's
type that into the chat?
yes.
And I'll try and copy paste it because I just want to spell it right. So if
This is what I would recommend everyone to change to as fast as possible. Because the other one really, I see so many issues with keeping too much subglottic pressure at the end there that it makes no sense in the big picture. What I
but
see.
type in there again as well. You said Gregorian hand. I don't, I'm not really familiar with it myself, so I need to know how to look it up exactly. How do you spell that?
So it's
Guidonian hand. Yeah, I didn't get that.
the name. The guy was called Guido. So yeah, you can kind of tell a little bit of a narcissist there.
There you go. Okay, so yeah, interesting. There's always more stuff to learn. If anybody has another question, we're going to take another question and then wrap up today's session. I think this is a great reminder also for me, and I'm going to be paying more attention to this as well, how I inhale through the nose and just observe how that influences my onset, how it helps me start in the right position that I want to be in. I think that's very, very, very fascinating. Obviously, been quite aware of this in the past, but it's also good for a fresh infusion of thought. Going to help me to observe my clients and as well in my singing, observe that a little bit more and become a little bit more aware of that. So with any closing thoughts you'd like to leave, Søren?
Just sing. Listen to what you want to do with your voice. Know what you want to do with your voice. If you don't know, your brain will not understand it either. So just by knowing I want to belt, your brain is already setting you up to do what you want to happen, instead of it being a fight and a stretch to get where you want to go.
Thank you very much. I love that comment. Yes. As soon as you think, I want to do this, or I want to learn this, you just set yourself on that path. And we'll do our very best to keep you stimulated with new thoughts and answers and information and methodologies. So I want to thank Søren for being here. I want to thank all of you for tuning in. I want to thank you for your questions. We love getting your questions. Some of these questions are really great, and they'll also force us to keep looking and researching on our own. So let's all join together and give Søren a nice big round of virtual applause. Send him some love.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Søren. And also, if you're following on a computer or your phone, if you want to put on if you want to do a fan shot here with Søren and post, go ahead and do a nice screenshot right now. I'm going to take a screenshot of Søren. I'll give you guys a few fun views. All right. So there we go. And then here's another gallery view. We got some people here live with us in the meeting, and also let's pop back here just in case you want to see me and Søren together. There you go. All right, excellent. And I want to also thank Søren personally, because he is actually he's been having some issues with his tooth.
Oh yes.
Right? You've been having some serious pain with wisdom teeth.
Yes.
And
I've been very lucky there.
I just want to thank you for being, a total professional and being here to share with us and not canceling, because, wisdom teeth can be very, very painful to deal with.
I've just been able to do an ah vowel a little bit better in my mouth for the last 4 days. So yeah, it's been interesting to teach like that, not being able to show first what I wanted. So the dorsal-laryngeal motor cortex can be a little bit more activated, but it's been happening.
All right, thank you so much, Søren, for being here today. Thank you for everybody that's been tuning in. So we're going to leave you with some music. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. It's really easy, singingrevealed@gmail.com, piece of cake. If you haven't yet, just subscribe to the YouTube channel or our Facebook page so you can click notifications. Then you'll always be notified about all of the Voice Masters live streams coming up. We have some amazing people coming up every week. It's always exciting to be here. We learn something new every time. So tune in, follow us, and also if you want to join us live in the Zoom meeting, this is really a way you can help support Voice Masters live stream. Become a Singing Revealed member. Join us live in the meeting, and we'd be happy to have you. I'm going to leave you guys with some music, and also with a little promotion here. We've got a self promotion. This is super important. You want to get in on this. I have my online singing course coming out. Here you go. It's called The 4 Activities of Singing. If you want to get involved in this is a great time. We're doing the beta launch on March 1st, okay? And we're going to open it up during the month of March. You're going to get the full version of the course for 50% off. You'll get a free Singing Revealed membership for 6 months. So basically, we're almost giving you this course for free for joining the beta phase. And we're just doing this for our followers and our members. So this is a private launch. We're not doing any marketing about it. The beta version. Get on board with it. If you'd like to, just go to Singing Revealed /pre-launch. You'll see it right here. Singing Revealed. Wait, I got to go this way. /pre-launch right there. sign up there. We're going to send you all the information, some really great content for you to have access to. You're going to get the Singing Revealed membership for free, which is an archive of over 40 hours of master's classes with top international professional coaches, researchers, educators. It's really an extremely good value, and I can't wait to share this information with you. Thank you all so much for being here. We're going to go back, put on some music, and wish you a fantastic weekend. So, and this is just to promote, my wonderful clients that introduced me to this band called Starset. We like Starset. They've got a very interesting mix here of rock, pop, electric, and so I'm going to leave you with some of their music, and look forward to welcoming you all very soon again on Voice Masters live stream. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. You can follow us on social media to stay up to date.
We were born over the world. We were flying through the sunlight.